Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today, and welcome to today's webinar from our Build Your Career webinar series. My name is Scott Levine, and I am the membership manager here at the IEEE Computer Society. Each month, we will be hosting a webinar on vital business skills that will help you excel at your current job and be helpful at your next job and throughout your career. Topics will be on communication skills, verbal and written, body language, and interview tips, to name a few. Before we get started, I would like to address some housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded. You can ask questions in the Q&A box you see on your screen. Also, we'll answer as many questions as she can following her presentation. If possible, please try to reference the slide your question refers to. Today's webinar is titled Squelch the Burnout. I think over the past year, we've all felt at times a little bit of this burnout effect. So today, also will walk us through how to recognize the burnout feeling, how to handle it appropriately on both a professional and personal level so you can squelch the burnout. As mentioned, joining us today is Elsa Velasco-Paul, co-founder and creator of the M&E Group, a marketing consulting firm based in Tulsa, Oklahoma since 1997. Elsa also serves as the International Customer Experience Manager for the Crosby Group. Elsa also trains corporations on both in person when that was allowed and through webinars on numerous subject matters such as communication skills, solution thinking, personal branding, productivity habits, to name a few. Elsa, thank you for being here with us today, and the floor is yours.
Wonderful. Thank you, Scott. Friends, I'm going to take you on a trip with me. Imagine it's a cold winter morning, January 1985. And as you walk down a cold, dark tunnel, you're carrying your miner's pick in one hand, and in the other, a caged canary making you company as you walk down the familiar shaft. Just like you've done for months and years before, you find yourself a nice little place where you put your chirping friend, you start to work, and you get the day going. Your companion's chirping makes the work a little bit more bearable. It almost feels like a conversation with both of you whistling back and forth. Until he doesn't reply. The hairs on the back of your neck stand up, and instinctively you scramble for your life in a mad dash to get out of the shaft. Canaries, it turns out, are much more sensitive to carbon monoxide, much, much more than humans. Around 1911, miners started carrying canaries into the mines with them, and they quickly become the metaphor that all of us know about when the canary keels over, it's time to leave, it's time to evacuate. Carbon monoxide is odorless, colorless, and it tends to replace oxygen molecules in the bloodstream, which keeps actual oxygen molecules from reaching organs and tissues. At first, carbon monoxide poisoning is just going to cause you a little bit of a headache, some dizziness, a little bit of shortness of breath, but it can quickly become fatal. Burnout is just like that. It's never sudden, but it creeps through and it becomes part of our daily routine, and it convinces us that that is normal. By the time that we get diagnosed, quote unquote, with it, it's often too late. So let's think this over in a bigger way. What really causes burnout? Do I cause burnout to myself, or are only the external factors the ones that cause burnout? Putting it in other ways, did the bird make itself sick, or did the mine make the bird sick? Pretty good question, huh? Hi, everybody. Just like Scott said, my name is Elsa Velasco-Paul, and I am part of the M&E Group, and I am delighted to be here with you again. This is, of course, a session, and all of our sessions are developed to be a hands-on experience. We're going to go from the ABCs, which is the foundational discussion. We're going to show you some examples, and then we're going to show you the improvement areas or where we need to get a little bit better. We're To make sure that everybody uses their time much, much better, I want you to get pen and paper or somewhere where you can write, because we do have a lot of questions that if you participate, you're going to get the maximum benefit of this section. Yes, like Scott said, we have a Q&A, and on here we have some fantastic people helping us today. If you have any questions, LinkedIn is your friend, and I have connected with some of you already. Thank you for that. We're here thanks to a fantastic partnership with brilliant people. Number one, thank you to the IEEE Computer Society, Michelle, Scott, Eric, Carrie, thank you so much for your invaluable support. And also, I want to thank the team that we have behind the scenes. Today, we have Mike on the Q&A, and any questions that you have that you feel you want an answer quickly, just go ahead, put it on there, because Mike can take care of you. If I can't get back to your answer, I'll make sure that I reply after the session. Okay, but that's enough of us. I want to know about you. Where are you in your career? Are you a student? Are you mid-level? Are you a C? Are you a retired? Where are you? Because that is really going to help us tailor this conversation to you guys' needs. Hey, Scott, can we put the poll? Awesome. So here we have student, PhD candidate, we have an entry level, team lead, supervisor, manager, directors or the C-suite, retired, and other. If you can, click one and then click submit. And in a couple of seconds, we're going to find out who is here. Scott, you would know how many are coming in, so you tell us when we can see the results.
Sure thing. We'll give them about another 10 seconds or so.
Perfect. Wonderful. Let's see. Oh, very interesting. Very interesting. I love this. Wonderful. Here's what I really like this, because we have a lot of the folks that are in supervisory levels, and that is exactly the kind of people that we want to take care of burnout. For anybody who is my PhD candidates, I feel your pain. If anybody knows burnout, that's probably you. And for my students, there's nothing better than you guys making sure that you know what causes burnout, how to manage it, and how to prevent it so that you never, ever have to deal with this. So, now that we've taken care of this, let's get a little bit serious. Or maybe not. As you can see, this disclaimer is just our humorous attempt to saying, if you do have any questions, if you want to borrow any of the material here, please connect with us. We're going to be more than happy to help you out and to work with you. Number one, this presentation is not intended as medical advice, so if you do need medical advice, please connect with your primary care physician. And if you do need some more of the information contained here and you want to know the repositories of the information, let us know. Usually, LinkedIn is the easiest way to connect with us. Now, hear this out. In the time I finish this sentence that I'm saying, the global workforce has tossed $32,000 per second to the drain as a result of lost productivity every year. Workplace stress is estimated to cost the U.S. economy a little bit more than $500 billion. That's with a B. And each year, 550 million workdays are lost due to stress on the job. Some other folks say that apparently burnout employees are likely 2.6 more times to be actively looking for another job. Of these, 63% are taking all of their sick days or just taking more than sick days, and 23% of those are actually going to the emergency room. This is very, very serious stuff. And I think that if that is not a good reason to be discussing burnout, I don't know what is. The main reason why we need to talk about burnout in a serious way, in a tactical way, is because this stuff, it's real, it's crippling, and it's ridiculously expensive. Very, very expensive. We talked about the 550 million workdays lost. Okay, think about this too. Companies that don't have systems in place to support the well-being of their employees have higher turnover because people leave, have lower productivity, and also higher healthcare costs. In companies that have a lot of high pressure activities, this goes even higher, to probably like 50%. Well, what about you and me? If we're not in these high pressure activities, where are we in this metrics? Research into Google search data revealed that online searching habits as of, was it January? Yep, January of 2021. The most search term was burnout spike. Searches online for symptoms with words like signs of burnout have already increased right now, as of February, by 24%. And that increased from 2020, which was already an increase. Data shows that last winter, there was a high record of the burnout spike. And you know what? On average, the total searches have increased by 41% annually since 2017. This is not new stuff, people. This is old. This has been growing, and I don't think we're doing a great job at addressing it. So, I want to know what you think about burnout. I have a couple of questions here, and I would like to know, what do you think about burnout? Do you think we need to be talking about burnout, or is this something that it's just a fad in the new word of the day? Here we have the first questions. What motivated me to be here, or why am I here? Number one, I'm experiencing burnout. Somebody I know could be experiencing burnout. I'm concerned about burnout within my team. I just want to know about burnout. I want to learn how to deal with burnout, or I'm here to debunk the myth of burnout. If you can, please click the option that best applies to you. And then once we have a good selection, Scott, if you can let us know what the results are, that will be fantastic. Wonderful. Perfect. And the reason why I always share this when I give this presentation is because the number one factor that people feel that hurts the most about burnout is the sensation of being alone, of being in an island. I want everybody to see this 51%. You are not alone. There's a whole lot of people that are going through this. You know what's the good news? You and me together, we can get out of this. And we're going to get out of it in a good way, not just scraping by. So, why are we talking about burnout? We're talking about burnout because it is important, because it is critical, and because the effects of it are long-lasting. Now, one of the key questions that people ask is burnout exactly the same as stress? Great question, and let's start from there. Not really. Burnout and stress have a different relationship. Let me see. Think of burnout and stress as one feeds the other. Stress or prolonged stress feeds and can become into burnout. Does that make sense? By definition, burnout is an extended period of stress that it's always going to feel like you can't get it to go down. If stress is short, like short bursts of it, in a couple of days, it's okay. It's not going to be that harmful. However, if that same stress feels like it's never ending, or it comes with feelings of hopelessness, of apathy, you feel empty, then that is where we want to have the red flag. That is an indicator of burnout. The interesting thing about burnout is that burnout is not only mental. Burnout is emotional, mental, and often physical exhaustion that comes because, yes, again, we have repeated stress happening in our lives. Though most people relate burnout with work, it can also appear in other areas of our life, like parenting, for example, or caretaking, and even romantic relationships. The term burnout it goes back to, I want to say, 1970s. And for the past 50 years, the whole medical community was arguing about what is it? Is it a disease? Is it a syndrome? Is it something, psychological? Recently, very recently, actually last year, burnout was recognized by the World Health Organization, and it says that it's a syndrome. And actually, they are putting measures in place and training a lot of the bigger organizations to put guidelines to help these organizations to prevent it, not to manage it. And that is key. Burnout is not going to be just the effect of you're pulling 18-hour days, or you have 3 jobs, or you have too many things going on in your life. No, that's not it. Think of this. If you're starting to feel cynical, depressed, lethargic, that is not normal. And that's when we need to go and figure out, am I going through burnout? And you know why it happens? Because we lose control. Let's talk a little bit more about this. How many different types of burnout are there? If you read books or literature about this, you're going to find an innumerable amount of classifications. For the purpose of our session today, we're going to use this one, which only goes to 3. And this probably makes sense to you because you've seen it. It's going to be by volume, by inaction, or by boredom, obviously, and by socialization. The one by volume is the one that we hear and we know most about, right? It's the one that, you're constantly being booked back to back. You'll have calls from 7 in the morning all the way to 10. You have no time or no energy for yourself, and you feel completely exhausted. Usually, if you are exhausted because of work, you're also exhausted because you have too many things going on at home or going on with family and friends. The second one is the other side of the coin. This one is the one that it happens because you're not being challenged, or because you just feel that you're stuck in a place, and, very important, you can't get out. Remember when we talked about control? Exactly. We don't have control of when we can get out of this boring place that we don't want to be. If people are uninspired, if they don't know when they can start to make changes, they start to feel stuck. They start to feel paralyzed. Think of this. If you tell somebody who feels that way, that they feel stuck, that a year from now, they're going to be in the same position, oh boy, it's going to get ugly real fast. As it should, because you're telling this person that all this ugliness they're experiencing is going to continue for a long period of time. The third one is so interesting because this is rather new in the way that we're approaching it. And by socialization is for some of my favorite people in the world, my people pleasers, my empaths, my introverts. Yes, you, my friends. You are very susceptible to burnout because you would rather be super uncomfortable than make somebody else uncomfortable. And you know what? Because you have that approach towards your relationships, you attract people that often want to siphon that energy after you. And that's not really good. As a result, you're going to feel like you're constantly socially drained. You're going to feel tired, and it's not a physical tiredness. Intrapersonal burnout it is an absolute reality. It is very, very important to approach. Now that we understand what the types of burnout there are, how about if we find out what causes it? Don't you guys want to find out? Let's go see. The main reasons of burnout are going to be, oh my goodness, as diverse as there are, different kind of situations here in this planet. But again, like we said in the previous slide, it goes down at the core to feeling that you have no control over your own life and over things that matter to you. Maslach did a fantastic survey. I think it was either 6,500 or 7,500 full-time employees. And what they did was they asked them, what makes you feel that you're burned out? And that's how they came with this classification. The number one was unfair treatment at work. That makes sense. Number two, unmanageable workload. And pay attention to this. It's not the volume of work, it's how you're being treated. That's the number one cause. Obviously, the third one is lack of role clarity. And that can be because your direct supervisor doesn't know what they're doing or can't tell you what they're doing, or because you have too many things going on in companies that are rotating a lot. And obviously, a lack of communication and support comes often hand in hand, and an unreasonable time pressure. Unreasonable time pressure means that the person feels as if the work that they're being given to do is excessive for how much time they have. And what is key is that it doesn't matter if it's real or not. The person that is experiencing burnout feels it that way. And that is key because we're going to talk about how we as leaders can approach these kind of situations. Social and environmental chaos, we added it because, as you guys can figure, 2020 was an amazing year in the sense that it threw everything it had at us. And very interestingly, because people had no control over what they could do, where they could go, or even people that they could visit or jobs, the reasons for burnout skyrocketed incredibly. So that's a new one that we didn't have probably like 5 or 6 years before. So remember what I told you to have that pen and paper close by? Okay, here's when we get to know about you. And before we start, I know, don't worry, all of this is completely anonymous. Nobody's going to know. So just take this opportunity for you to find out about it. In the next slide, you're going to see some examples of some feelings that we can experience during our lives. I don't want you to work so much as of like last year. I would like you to work how you're feeling today. If you're not here, or if you're more interested about a person, a friend, a colleague, or a family member, use it the same way. And you can click as many as you want. The first one obviously is emptiness or a sense of dread, frequent feelings of cynicism, anger, or irritability. You're obsessing over problems at work or in life. You have a real pessimistic outlook about work or life. You self-doubt, the imposter syndrome. You feel inadequate about what you're doing. You want to isolate yourself from activities that you used to do before. Your work performance starts to get impacted as a result of, and you know it because you start to feel that the relationship with your peers is changing. You wake up in the morning and you're already tired. You wake up during the day and you already have a headache. And usually your stomach comes with the same type of symptoms. Very interestingly, you start to not feel so bad about other people. And that's called dwindling compassion. And increasingly, because we don't like where we are, we want to increase or start thinking of escapist activities like daydreaming a lot or just going to places where it doesn't look at all like what we're doing. That means also a wish to drop out of society, or even more drastically, I want to move away from work or friends and family. So as you click, Scott, you would know when our friends have finished, and then we can see the results.
Yeah, so we made a small mistake. We set the poll up as only select one. So Elsa, do you want to have them type in some of their answers into the chat box? Would that
Absolutely.
work for you?
Yes. I'd love that. That's a great idea.
All right, so we'll give them a minute or so. You'll be able to see the one that they selected. Mm-hmm. And I think, do you want to, as they give time to type in, do you want to take one question?
Yes, I'd love to.
All right, perfect. Someone wrote in, how can one detect burnout in a person before it becomes obvious and the person drops out? I've had this happen several times.
Yes. Oh, my friend, you actually just stole my thunder. Because that's what we're going to go next. We're going to actually go and see what does it look like. And afterwards, we're going to say, what can we do about it? Great question. Perfect.
Okay, well, that was really the only one in so far.
Oh.
So also, that's fine. We can lead into that, and I think they're starting to come into the Q&A box if you want to.
Yes,
I don't know
wonderful.
if you have that open up on your screen.
Yes, I do, and I'm actually reading it. Fantastic. Yes, the feeling of inadequacy is incredible. How much? Well, you've seen it, right? The fake it till you make it kind of expression. Dwindling compassion. It is so incredible because it feels almost like you're outside of your body. To see yourself like, whoa, what did I just do? And I want everybody to know that everybody, like a huge chunk of people in the workforce, are going through this. So if anything, and Mike, if you wouldn't mind, could we collect these? Because I still want to be able to send back to our friends, what the tally was. Now, what does this matter, or why is this important? Because when we feel like all of these, like a feeling of cynicism, and I'm angry, it is not normal. We get used to, I'm just a cynical person, or I'm sarcastic. I don't think so. It is funny for a little bit, but if it is continuously the way that you relate with others and the way that you see life, something happened. And the good news is we can do something about it. So once you get the slides, you can use this just to keep a check on yourself. But more importantly, what I want you to do right now is I want you to write down the number of how many of these statements did you click or did you select. So for example, there's 14 and I picked 7. Then I want you to write that number, 7. Or, nope, I picked all 14. I'm going through all of this. Then I want you to write 14. If you say, I really don't have any of these, then perfect. Just write 0. And say this because we're going to use it in a little bit. Exhaustion and overwhelm is usually paired with burnout, because burnout, what it really is, it's peak performance that went haywire. People often connect burnout with exhaustion, with depression, with cynicism. And it is because it's a byproduct, or it happens because we are exposed to prolonged stress. It has nothing to do with working a lot of hours, but it does happen because there's a lot of risk, you don't have control, and you don't have an alignment between what you're passionate about and what you're being forced to do. Sometimes you start to get that feeling that the work that you're doing, no matter how much people tell you that it's wonderful, deep inside you feel, I'm not doing a good job. All of this is super, super interesting, but what's really interesting is, what does that mean to you? All right, So if you have your number in your hand, let's see what stage of burnout could you be in. Let's look at this. With burnout, number one, I want everybody to know that it's important to take regular steps to prevent it. And we've highlighted these 5. And again, there's an innumerable amount of classifications. But the key is, if you can detect it, you can do something about it. So let's use that number. If you have a 0, you are super healthy, great job, honeymoon phase, awesome. If you have from 1 to 3, you're going to be stage 2, the one that says onset of stress. If you have 4 to 8, then we could be in stage 3. 9 to 11 options could be an indicator of number 4 or burnout. And then anything above, obviously 11, is going to be a signal of chronic burnout. And I have to repeat again, we're not medical professionals, nor is this intended to be as medical advice. But what we really want to do is create awareness and help you improve our life. If we can do it for at least one of you, I consider myself and my job done. Let's talk about the first one. What is this whole honeymoon phase? Well, the honeymoon phase is, imagine this. You got a new job, you start, and you are committed. You have so much energy, you're creative. And usually here you're very satisfied about what you're doing. You have a lot of optimism, the happy-go-lucky. You commit to the job a little bit more than you need to. And key, creativity is free-flowing 24/7. Therefore, there's high productivity. Really, really good job. When we go into number 2, and remember, this is going down because we're having stress that doesn't let go. The second stage is you start to feel that some days are a little bit tougher than others. Your optimism some days it's really hard to get it up. And then you see other symptoms physically and even mentally going on with you. Things like it's hard for you to focus because you get distracted. You're irritable, like a very short fuse, maybe with your family or with coworkers. Your sleep starts to get really disrupted. Your productivity can be impacted because you lose concentration easily. You start forgetting things. You're tired. You're fatigued. A little bit of headaches for some people. And very interestingly, grinding your teeth. And that can be at night or during the day. If your jaws or if you have common headaches in the back, that could be a sign that even if you don't know it, you are really clenching your teeth. All right, then we move on. Stress is really pounding on. It's been a couple of months. We're number 3, chronic stress. Well, this one is when we go from motivation to experiencing stress on an incredibly frequent basis. 5 days, you're experiencing stress, probably 4. You're also experiencing all those symptoms before, but really, really magnified. That physical illness, things start to hurt. Like the lower back, your knees, the part in your back, your upper back. You start to procrastinate things more and more, and you don't know why. You resent things, and you won't say it, but somebody got a promotion, and you're just, and you don't know why, because it's somebody that probably you even like. You have a little bit of an anger or an aggressive behavior. And if people ask you if there's something going on, denial kicks in. We don't recognize that we're going through an issue like this one. Then if we continue in the same process and we haven't been able to manage it, then we kick into burnout. Well, entering into this stage 4 is when things get really critical. You can't, even if you wanted to, you can't continue as normal because your body physically and mentally is having a hard time coping. And you're going to see that your body starts to disconnect and say, I need to rest. people have different ways of addressing this, but some of the key things that you're going to find is the pessimistic outlook that we were talking about starts to spread not only at work or also at life, at friends, and even my future in general. You have a sense of emptiness, a sense of there's no purpose in what you're doing. The self-doubt that you have becomes intrinsic. So it also you start to self-doubt yourself as a parent, as a friend, as a coworker. The headaches and all the illnesses with your stomach, and it really becomes chronic. So you go to the doctor to get some medication to treat something that you think it has nothing to do with what's going on. You desire to drop out of society, and you start to see sometimes in critical cases, people that just spend a lot more time by themselves. And it's just an unhealthy amount of time not wanting to go outside. Number five is it's very, very important if we ever find somebody that is there. This is when burnout is embedded in my life and it becomes part of who I am. People describe me as that person. Some of the examples here is chronic sadness or chronic disappointment. It's very hard. Things that used to make me laugh or used to get me excited no longer can do that. Depression may kick in, and you have chronic mental and physical fatigue. And that's really tough because most people feel very, very alone, because nobody understands that whatever you're going through, you're not causing it to yourself, or like they say, it's just in your head. That's not true. That's not absolutely true. Let me give you an example. It's 7 a.m. and on the dot, Jonas Haley, one of our clients, is ready to start the day. Jonas is 43 years old, 44 by now. In 7 of those years, he has spent at a financial consulting firm in the west of the U.S. He's slated to be the next business development director, but he's totally earned it. He pulls 10, 12-hour days, but not all in once. He peppers it. He works 8 hours in the office, and then at home, he does a couple of hours, sneaks in a couple of times on his phone. He keeps himself updated on whatever is happening on the financial world, but he also makes social time with his peers and with his higher-ups. He's super smart, because when we met 4 years ago at another burnout webinar like this one, it really hit him hard, and he really got interested about the counter effects of burnout, specifically how burnout can sabotage promotions and advancement. That is why my friend Jonas started to make good changes. He decided to go to the gym all the time. He started to eat a little bit better, and of course, spending quality time with the family. This November, we reached out because we were consulting for him on something else. He was so burned out that he was thinking of the possibility of quitting if only he could afford it. Wait a minute, how did this happen? Well, it happens when what we think is rest or recovery is superficial. And that's what we have here. The best way to handle burnout is understanding that you have to recover. And there's 2 different ways. Passive, for example, is going to be the one that everybody knows. Passive recovery, TV and a beer, right? Sure. Well, sorry to break it to you, Charlie, but alcohol is terrible for your sleep. And the TV, it's going to keep your brain awake. And it's going to make it so difficult for you, if not to fall asleep, to stay asleep for longer times. Active is the complete opposite. Active is doing things that is going to help your body and your mind. Imagine flushing the day. So, for example, this is hyperbaric chambers, sensory deprivation tanks, And come on, don't judge. Those things really do work. Or things that like a long walk or retreats where you don't have anything around you. The reason why this is important is because the first step to recovery is you making the determination that you need to take action and do it right now. Once we understand that, what are the ways or the tactical ways that we can handle this burnout better? Well, remember in the first case, we talked about burnout by volume, right? If you have a ridiculous amount of work, make sure that you start tracking where you're spending your time and what are the resources that you have. And if you feel that you have a good relationship with your supervisor, approach them and show them with data that this is the amount of time that you have, these are the resources, and this is the amount of things that can't get done. It's just being very logical and a little bit more centered and letting the people around you know that there's something off. By boredom is going to be the complete 180, because here I want you to imagine if you had $1 million, what would you do? And whatever comes to mind, I would go fishing, I would go painting. That is where you need to find that engagement and that excitement. That is exactly what you need to integrate into your life. By socialization, remember we talked about the people pleasers, the nice ones. Very, very key. I want you to start delaying responses. Somebody comes and says, hey, can you babysit the kids for next weekend? Delay and say, yeah, let me give you an answer later about that. Because that helps you center yourself and gather the strength to most probably say no. And no sometimes is a great question. It's a great answer. The best way that I like to work with burnout is to prevent it. And I know that if you look at the picture, you see the surfer and the huge wave coming. It can feel like this. It's too big. It's too massive. But we really want to get ahead of burnout because it's easier to prevent burnout on a day-to-day basis than it is to manage once burnout has set on. We talked about the self-care practices, right? And self-care is just managing your sleep, managing who you relate to, managing what you do, and more importantly, making sure that you are aware of what is going on. Physical rest is key. Building mental resilience. Resilience is that ability that you have in your head to filter what is going on and not let it overwhelm you. That is key, and we're going to talk a little bit afterwards because I think it deserves a slide of its own. But building mental resilience really, really works when you pair it with having good relationships with your family, friends, co-workers, your neighbors, and also becoming active in a wider community. It doesn't have to be your neighborhood, but in something bigger than yourself. Controlling our environment is very key because if we know what causes us to go into burnout mode, we need to make sure that we don't go there. So if it is because somebody is very toxic in your life, just stop going to see that person. If it is because you're at a job where there's just too much work, feel comfortable enough to go and address it with your boss, as in, I love what I'm doing. Help me out. How can we manage this better? Because I want to really be a contributor to the team. When we talk about these, on a tactical level, we're talking about, resilience. We're talking about nurturing your body and doing the good things, which includes rest, very good rest. But it also includes the spiritual side, which is, that connectedness to something bigger than ourselves. The emotional side, which is that capacity that we can have to just express how we feel and not have anybody judge us by what we say. And you know what is super, super cool? Rest. Did you know that there are 7 types of rest? I know, right? The first one, you know it, right? Physical rest, slow down. But there's mental rest, and that is when you have been on a spreadsheet for 4 hours, get up, walk outside where there's only nature. A sensory rest often comes with that one, and it is because if you're like me, we are on screens probably maybe 18 hours a day. So what you need is also to disconnect yourself from anything that is bright and give your eyes and your mind a little bit of a rest. We have creative rest, and creative rest is very important if you want to have great ideas or innovation. How do you do that? Make sure you put yourself in very different ambiances than what you usually do. Social rest, we've talked about that one, is we detect where we have exhausting situations or people that are toxic, and we start to separate ourselves or putting more distance between them. And then spiritual, we talked about it. It's a little bit of that connection with something bigger than myself, sensing there is purpose in what I'm doing. Now, all of this is fantastic because all of this talks about me as a person. But the best way to make sure that all of this works is to start from the top. And that means us as leaders. Yes, us as leaders. We have big responsibility towards how this works. Especially during burnout times like this one with COVID-19, it's very key to understand that when we ask people what they want, we get the true answers to how to fix things. Here, we're talking about Frederick Herzberg's dual factor, the motivation and hygiene theory, which is basically saying that some things motivate people, and they're going to motivate them towards things that they like, right? And it seems like, for example, challenging work, when you recognize somebody publicly, the responsibilities, the opportunities to do something cool, the hygiene factors and the work factor are completely different. It is the salary. It is the work conditions. It's the new coffee machine that you put in there. It's the company policies. Is it easy for them to ask for vacation or whatnot? The administration. All of that is so key because that is what determines for people to feel that their job is manageable or not. Isn't that interesting? So does that mean that the company is in charge of making me feel good and taking care of my health? Well, no, let's not take it to the other extreme. I'd like to say we're a little bit in the middle. You know, there's chaos all around us. None of us have been through anything like this forever. And things in the old days, before, they were super centralized and they were compartmentalized. We were operating in very traditional ways. 2020 forced us to be very decentralized, but at the same time, it asked us to be a little bit more lateral in the way that we communicate, in the way that we operate. And one cool thing that we're seeing is how peers are starting to be the ones that are empowering themselves to recognize and to assist their friends and their coworkers with regards to mental health, but they are also the ones that are giving the solutions to how this can be managed and, very importantly, prevented. Why? Because chaotic times make the rules or the previous rules go out the window. So we can't try to fix new problems with old solutions. What can we do? Well, we can keep communication channels open. That's critical. And use different ones. Not everybody communicates the same way. It's very important that we are honest about what we know and what we don't know, because people can sniff it out anyways. And understanding that collective approaches, or more of a co-op approach, is going to be better suited for times like these than just having a hammer down approach. You know, a couple of years ago when we had another session about burnout, somebody asked me if burnout was the new flavor of the month, the new fad. And no, it's not. It's so not a new fad that in 2020, the World Health Organization decided to call it a syndrome. It's that important. That's why today we took you from all the way from the ABCs, the fundamentals, the basics. Why are we even talking about burnout? We even talked about the different types, the symptoms, and then we decided to go into the tactical. How do we manage? How do we prevent it? And then we even discussed how do we manage it now? And we discovered that an interdependent approach is probably going to be a better option. Now, if you don't believe me, I think you should ask Jonas. Remember Jonas? We talked with Jonas this past January. Yep, end of January. Jonas is a completely different person. He admits that he's not only sleeping better, but he's also enjoying now goofy stuff that he used to do before. He made critical changes to his lifestyle, even more than he did before, including rest that really matters, that he really needed. He's now doing activities that matter. And even more importantly, he started to be segregated about the people that he hangs out with and even what he does. He's still struggling because he's not perfect with not checking his phone after 9 p.m. And that's one of the rules that he has. And it's very hard for him, not have his cell phone in bed. But you know what? Cheryl, his wife, says she got her husband back. And you know what? On the call, Jonas looks completely different, but in a good way, Jonas said this. Funny thing. He thought that all these cuts would impact his work in a bad way, like not get him the directorship. He called me because last Friday, his boss called him and told them that in a couple of weeks they were going to make the announcement. He got the directorship. So everybody meet Jonas Haley, Director of Business Development Markets in North America. His boss told him, something happened a while ago, Jonas. You got your passion back. His boss even said, you have the kind of drive and commitment we need at the helm right now. And that's when he laughed. He said, this is crazy, Elsa. When I started to slow down, that's when I got better. How ironic. So I wanted to dive in. I asked him, what changed? You've been working on this. What made you change so drastically now? And then he said, the mine story about the canary. And I said, what does that have to do? He said, I don't know why, but I felt exactly like that bird, working a lot, doing a lot, but somehow it didn't matter. The bird just dies, it keels over, and they probably get another one. That's it. So no matter how hard it was or how weird it felt, I knew I had to change. I wanted to change. And at the end of the day, there was one thing that stuck in my mind. I needed to come out of that mine shaft alive. So I did. It is always our honor to be with you. And as usual, you have been more than fantastic. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Elsa. That was a great presentation. I think everyone listening learned a lot from it. Do you want to start tackling some questions?
Absolutely. That's my favorite part.
All right, perfect. Could you repeat the actions to provide creative rest?
Yes. And the 7 types of rest basically comes down to, if it is social rest, you separate yourself from toxic people. If it's creative rest, you step away from the screens or from anything that has bright lights and walk in nature where there's nothing gadgety. If it is physical rest, it's the cool, nothing electric or bright in your room. And obviously, one of the key ones that we have is the emotional rest, which is the ability that you have to say how you feel in a safe environment. If you folks want to, I can, connect with me on LinkedIn, and I can give you the whole excerpt. How about that? Awesome.
Sounds perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Next question. How do you see compartmentalizing as a way to stem off burnouts?
Okay, hang on just once again. I am trying to read it. Yes. Here's the deal, Frederica. I love it because it's easy for me. And it's almost that left brain, right brain. But for some folks, they're more fluid. So if it works for you, absolutely. The key, just like resilience, is to put some space between you and whatever the situation is so that you have enough time to rationalize it and see it as it is and not let it overwhelm you. So absolutely, yes, if that works for you, go ahead and do it. Just as long as it serves for you to recognize the situation as a situation that does not rule you. Perfect.
Excellent. How can one deal with burnout considering our lives have become so device-centric as most of the work is done virtually and online?
Oh my goodness. Yes, yes, and yes. And I am probably, I feel your pain because I'm that. I sleep with my phone, or I used to. Everything is my phone. But I learned that the quality of my sleep and even my creativity dwindled a lot. So the rule of thumb is you don't have to completely separate yourself from it. You just need to have breaks. So start with 5-minute breaks. 5 minutes that you would pick your phone and just don't do it. And then increase it to 10 minutes, and then make it an issue that at lunch, instead of going on your phone, you're going to go for a quick 5-minute walk. The point is that you're going to disrupt the old habits and introduce new, healthier habits. But great question. Yes.
Excellent. Next question will be, I think this refers to the question we had right around the little snafu with the poll. The question about sudden and unexpected burnout later on. How would you prevent that? Let me scroll through and find that question.
Okay.
That doesn't ring a bell. Here it is. How can one detect burnout in a person before it becomes obvious and the person drops out?
Okay, so I'm assuming it's somebody that you know, that you have a close relationship, right? Remember this person, and that's why I'm a fan of pictures in different ambiances. Remember this person probably 10 years ago. My favorite, I default to, if you met these folks when they were kids, that's who we are. That's who we naturally are. Of course, because of society, we can't be fully like that, but that's our essence. If we've strayed too far from that, if we were like a very happy and outwardly person and now we're cynical and very introverted, something happened. And that's why our body is reacting to it. That's not how we are. And our body doesn't like it, and it's never going to like it. So we need to do something about it. But that's a huge conversation. So.
Right, yeah, no, it sounds like it. So I'm going to ask their question, but I'm at the first part of this one, and I'm going to sort of read their statement. They're wondering if they're sort of suffering from burnout or if they're sort of cheating themselves. So though I feel I have all of those symptoms occasionally, somehow I feel I'm still not burnt out and think my limits are higher. Am I a very optimistic person, but I'm not sure I'm right or if I'm cheating myself? Is this common?
I have absolutely met a lot of people that have a resilience threshold that is ridiculously high. And that is, I wish all of us could be like that. I am going to go with yes. You are healthy. You're good. You just have wonderful, wonderful limits, so you can take it on. The only thing that I would suggest is make sure that even if you don't feel you need it, take those rests or those measurements. Imagine this. When should we drink water? We should drink water before we are passing out because we're thirsty. Same thing with burnout. Don't wait until you feel burned out. Do things before then.
Excellent. And that's great advice. Next question. Could some items on the burnout checklist be part of our personality? Does that speed up the burnout process?
That is a great question. I would be a little bit irresponsible if I answered without having a little bit more color on it. But sure, why not? There's 7 billion of us, so of course it is an option. But what I'm saying is, I think deep inside we know if it is or not, and that's okay. That is absolutely okay.
All right. Next question. How do you deal with or tackle burnout when you're under a strict deadline?
Yes, and I can absolutely relate to that because, as some of you know, I was an attorney by training, corporate. So if anybody was pulling 16-hour days, that was me. And one of the things that I learned is for you to be able to tackle burnout when you have a very high level stress situations is just like when you go to the gym, you exercise a certain part, you let it rest the next day, and you're very intentional about letting it rest, right? Same thing. If today was a very taxing day with regards to a report that I had to do, make it a point the next day, at least equal amount of time, that you're not thinking about that you're doing something, or reward yourself with something that has nothing to do with it, like coloring or painting or grilling or woodworking, but you have to counter it all the time so that you are almost doing like a negative out of that deposit of burnout, let's call it that way. But think of yourself as a deposit. For you to not be in burnout, you need to make sure that you have more positives that can counter the negative. And you can't do it all at once. You have to do it continuously. So that's why I'm a big proponent of a schedule where you schedule your rest and your fun times,
All right, excellent. That looks like it's the last question. So first, I want to thank everyone here for joining us today. I would also like to thank Elsa again for her time in that great presentation. I think there's a lot we could all sort of take away and things how we can, reduce the burnout as we go through these sort of challenging times. If you enjoy this webinar, the next webinar in the Build Your Career webinar series is on March 23rd. That is the Essentials of Project Management and will be by Adam Schmidt. We have 2 additional webinars coming up in March. Both are from our Technical Talk webinar series. The first is from our Distinguished Lecturer series on AI for HPC Experiences and Opportunities on March 11th. And from our Standards Activity Board webinar series, we have the Standards for Cloud Federations on March 16th. And this will focus on IEEE Standard P2320, which is the working group for standards for intercloud interoperability. Again, I would like to thank all of you attending and Elsa for sharing her knowledge with us. Thank you again, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody.